everybody. This morning it's 8 o'clock, Columbian Peak, straight up black. Oh yeah, that's the good stuff. So after last night's video, Zoom interview with Mike Mashat, it motivated me to do this morning's show in front of the only piece of art I ever had commissioned, a Troy White original. That is the original, and that's my ride, the Embraer 190, and that's an oil on canvas. And Mike was talking about how fast a guy like Jack Linwood could paint out, could paint or could turn out a box art or a poster, movie poster or something. But that's one of the reasons I think a lot of these guys use, I believe it's called gouache, which is a type of watercolor because it dried very quickly. And of course, oils, take forever to dry. It took Troy, quite a while to get that done. He sent me some pictures of it in various stages of progress, how he traced it out and everything. And kind of like seeing how a model is made, a mold is made, seeing how an artist does this thing is kind of interesting to see the outlines and the techniques. But at first you go, well, so that's how they do it. But then you're like, yeah, it's still a lot of talent. And morning coffee breaks everything loose. I wanted to thank Jack Gruner. He's the one that sent me those copies of the Trash News, or wrote those copies of the Trash News that, the comedy thing about model building. For example, proper ways to detail your model outhouse. How does one make a 1/32 scale roll of toilet paper, without buying it from Verlinden? It's funny, in Scale Modeler magazine one time I did see something that was very, it definitely defined different. It was a scale model of a jail cell, a modern jail cell, done by a prisoner who was in jail. He modeled his own cell. And given the limited amount of stuff you're allowed to have in a jail, I don't know where he got the materials, but it was actually some very impressive work. So that probably takes the cake for different. And so I'm still working on the video with Pete Vetri. I'll probably get a rough cut done today and send it to Pete. He's going to send me some more pictures, but he's been super busy because, contrary to what the glamorous image, running a kit model company is not all peaches and cream. Those guys work really, really hard. And so I don't think I had ever, hopping over to a totally different subject, I had never seen a kaiju movie about Gamera before. I mean, I'd seen some clips and snippets and maybe in some other movies, but apparently in 1995 there was obviously more modern Gamera movie made, still using the old techniques. And one of the online movie critics was saying that it was a pretty decent kaiju movie, and I went and saw it on YouTube. It was what you expect from a Japanese 1995 rubber suit monster film, but I had to admit, some of the model work and everything, it was pretty good. I found myself enjoying it. Sometimes I think I enjoy the kaiju movies just for the model work. And I talked about this before, but it's amazing when you see models that are built for movies for scenes that you would think, why didn't you just go out and film a car or something? Because I found an old picture of the Lydecker brothers, and they had this huge, bigger than a sheet of plywood, set with a model car and this little dust machine, and the camera set up and the car races across and it kicks up the dust. And I'm like, why didn't they just go out and film a car? I mean, it costs money to make all that stuff and film it and everything, and it can't cost that much to send a camera crew, a couple of stand-ins, and a car out to some country road. But apparently, there were a couple of reasons for it that I hadn't considered. One, given what it costs to send a crew and get permissions and everything, it's actually more expensive to do, even sometimes to do second unit work than that's what, by the way, for those who don't know, that's what second unit work is. Like, well, you'll see a movie, the actors are talking, and then you'll say, let's go somewhere, and then you'll see them driving their car across it, from a distance. You'll see their car driving across the countryside. That's not the actors, that's a couple of stand-ins and a lone camera crew, but that second unit work, that's done elsewhere. Apparently that can be surprisingly expensive also, whereas just when you've got some of the Lidecker brothers have all their equipment right there, they build something like this and crank it out in a day, and you're paying a cameraman and two modelers as opposed to a couple actors, a crew getting rights to use property, depending of course what it is, but also the model gives the producers and the cameramen a little more control. Well, let's have more dust. Let's try it from this thing and try all these different angles and all this other stuff. And it was just not something I would have figured. But now here's your question for the day. All right, what's the favorite part of a new kit? Is it seeing the box art when you're in the store? Oh, that's great. Or is it busting off that cello wrap? Or is it that smell of styrene? Or is it looking at the decal sheet? Oh, I couldn't wait to see the decal sheet. And of course, have to admit, a lot of times I kind of want to see the instructions, but just opening the box and looking at it, and I don't know, it's hard to say. Looking at the box art was a thrill. Reading the information on it, I think actually opening the box and seeing what you had inside, catching the little waft, the little styrene high, I kind of think that was my favorite part, because I can remember the anticipation when I would pedal my bicycle home with the model in my basket, in the bag, in the basket, and I would be excited about getting home so I could bust it open, and if I didn't do it in the store, which I didn't do if it was cello wrapped, but and then you get to work on it. And the worst part, waiting for the glue to dry. I can't go any further till the glue dries. Yeah. Are the fuselages together hard enough now I can stick the wings on? I may have mentioned this, but I think the Saturday morning, the ritual, when I had my $1 allowance and I had to scrape together 4 or 5 cents for the tax somehow during the week, but I remember I was so thrilled my parents bumped my allowance, I think, to $1.25, because now I could go buy the model, pay the tax and everything, and have a few cents left over, so I could get a model every week. And you can still remember my dad opening his billfold. Oh, when my allowance went up to $2 a week, I was in hog heaven. And I can still remember my dad, he's busy at work. Dad, I need my allowance. He stops and pulls out or sometimes he'd have to make change out of the cash register. Man, I felt like Jesse James robbing a bank. And the beauty of it is our store was literally right around the corner from the dime stores. We were at one end of the block, and they were at the end around the corner. And both dime stores were right beside each other, McCrory's and Christo's. And as I got older, only one of them had models, but both of them carried them for a while, and then later it was just one. But the Rexall's Drug, which was on the other side of the courthouse in the grand metropolis of Quincy, Florida, also carried them. And by this point, grocery stores and stuff didn't carry them. You know what they call the Mandela effect, which is where you have false memories because you've heard something or people have suggested something. I'm I was born in '61, and I'm positive I seem to remember toy sections in grocery stores and occasionally models in there. So, but I would not go to these places because by the time I was building models, I think the only three places in town were McCrory's, Christo's, and Rexall's. Billy, if you remember otherwise, or maybe Hollingsworth might remember, you can remind me if there was someplace else. I feel like I'm brain farting, but anyway, although I didn't have an exact routine, I may have mentioned this before, it was Saturday morning cartoons, then the Monkees, which was, of course, in syndication at that point, but there was, at least, yeah, and then the Banana Splits came on, but I didn't normally watch the Banana Splits, and then I'd, hop on my bike, pedal uptown. We lived at the bottom of the hill, so we had to push our bikes up this big hill because, God, riding up that hill wasn't happening. Well, I actually did it once or twice. Till one of the smart neighborhood kids said, you don't ride up the hill, you zigzag up it left and right, so you're not going up at such a steep angle. Once I learned that little trick, that totally changed how I use my bicycle. But, and I had this big Schwinn. When I was a little kid, I had the Stingray. And I think everybody had a Stingray, the 3-speed. God, that thing was so cool, but it didn't have baskets. You didn't put baskets on a Stingray because that uncooled it. So you always carried your paper bag in your hand, wrapped around a handlebar and try not to drop it. But then it was, I forget if it was get the model first or go to the movies first. I seem to remember sitting in the movie theater with bags, like a paper bag, gosh, memory fades. But also the movies, usually the matinees are 2 or 3 o'clock, so I'd leave the house at noon, go up, pick up a model, maybe go to a movie. And then, then come home. But a lot of times since my dad's store was so close to the dime store, you'd usually go over and grab a tube, as I mentioned, go over and get a tube of glue from him because he carried Tester's glue. And never even crossed my mind to pay for him. Dad, you want me to give you some money for the glue that I'm taking from your store? And often I'd show him what I got, and of course it usually pleased him if it was an airplane. If it pleased him, it pleased me, because every kid wanted to make his dad happy. And then home and build a model. Although I do remember, we were never supposed to call Dad at work, even though he owned the store. I can remember a couple of times we'd have models and we're out of glue. And we got to call Dad and tell him to bring some glue home for lunch. Dad, yeah, could you bring home a tube of glue? Okay, thank you. And then sure enough, Dad come home for lunch or after the end of work, and he pulled tube of Testers out of his shirt pocket. Oh, we were just happy as clams. These are back in the days when he came home. I was younger then. By this time, I wasn't doing that, but I remember being 5, 6, 7 years old, and when Dad would come home from work, he parked at the end of the yard down a hill on a little strip of asphalt we had. And most of the kids run out to greet him. We were so excited he was home. And that was just good times. But, I think that may be one reason that model building has remained has such a harsh, or not harsh, but such a deep, warm, nostalgic place for me is you associate it with all these wonderful things from when you were a kid. Probably the most wonderful thing about it all is that everyone you knew was still alive. Everyone you loved, I mean. Okay, Billy. If I can find that old slide somewhere, I'm probably going to embarrass you. One of the first photograph I remember being taken with a model airplane was my older brother had bought the Aurora, or may have been Comet back then. It was in the mid-'60s, so I guess it was already Aurora, Beech 18, and it was missing an engine. It was missing a nacelle and a prop. And we were down at Indian Rocks, Florida, at a little beach cottage. And he had to build it without it. So I remember he was so clever because he took a match and kind of burned and smoked the motor and said, yeah, the engine caught fire and dropped off. Now, you're going to love this. About 15, 20 years ago, a DC-3 from a company I think called Hannock that also operated Beech 18s. So there's a connection here, although this one was a DC-3. It was flying over Marietta, Georgia when an engine caught fire and literally fell off. And the DC-3 pilot was able to safely land the airplane in Marietta with just a flat, smoked, burnt firewall right there. So, Billy, good job. And if I can find that picture, I'll attach it up here. But it's a picture of us at Indian Rocks, and he's holding that little Aurora. I think I'm in the picture. I'll have to go see. But we all posed for a photo, and I guess my younger brother would have been 3, so I'd have been about 6. And we're all posing there, and he was so proud of that airplane. He's posing with it in the picture. And it's my mom and my grandmother and us, and it's just like I said. That photo may encapsulate why I love models to this day. It not only did I enjoy them for their own sake, but it just takes me back to a time where everyone I loved was still with me. And luckily, most of them still are. Well, folks, enjoy your coffee and have a great day. And good Lord willing, the creek don't rise. We'll see you tonight.